Police officers of Reddit. What was your they could have gotten away with it if they had kept their mouth shut moment? Not a police officer, but I know of this house in my local village that was a notorious drug den. The police came to search the place but couldn't find anything. As they were leaving, the lovely owner yelled at them that they should have brought the drug dogs. So yeah, they came back a few days later with the drug sniffing dogs and found huge amounts of drugs hidden away. Absolute morons. I was asked to help keep peace while two probation officers searched a guy's house. Before everyone gets upset, in most jurisdictions, you have to submit to a search of your person and your home if you're on probation. During the search, a PO lifted the probationer's mattress and said monotonously, "Wow." The probationer got upset and said, "Yeah, it's freaking meth and a gun, arrest me, I don't give a fuck." Turns out the PO found a huge dildo, but after the guy opened his mouth, the PO lifted the mattress more and found a bunch of individually wrapped grams of meth and a Glock 17. The PO said that seeing the dildo was enough for him to ignore the mattress, but because the guy said something, he kept looking. That guy's attitude and his need to open his mouth got him 10 years in prison. That's a bummer. I had a car pass me once. Passenger hangs the upper half of his body out of the passenger side window with his middle finger in the air while screaming, "Frap the police!" He had my attention for the seatbelt violation. I got behind the car and ran the registration. Registration is suspended. Registered owner's driver's license is attached to the registration and his license is suspended. Registered owner also has 2 warrants for retail theft. I stopped the car and they both started with a free speech thing and how I can't stop them for giving me the finger or swearing, which is 100% correct. When I pointed out that I can, however, stop them for the passenger not wearing a seatbelt and for the registration violation, suddenly they got quiet. Driver got arrested for suspended license and his warrants, and the passenger got himself a citation. The driver's vehicle got impounded. Moral of the story? Tell your passengers to shut their mouths. Had that guy not been a moron, his body would have been homeward bound. A cousin of a friend of mine travels around the state to take in deadbeat dads. Gets to one place. A 4-year-old kid is home. Dad isn't. So the cop starts talking to the kid, making sure he's okay and such. After a bit of this, kid says to cop,
"Want to see my dad's secret garden?"
Takes him to a closet with a false back, opens it up to see a small pot farm. Guy gets home to a few cop cars and a few charges. Stupid freaking kid. I've had countless times where dudes give consent to search them or their vehicle and they end up having drugs. It baffles me why you would let me search if you don't have to, knowing there's damn heroin in your car. LMAO. Not a cop either. Friend was pulled over for not wearing a seatbelt while he was with a few buddies. Gets handed his ticket. Guy in the back seat says, "Am I gonna get a ticket too?" Officer replies, "Well, were you wearing your seatbelt?" No." "Alright, can I see your ID?" Not the brightest fella about. Pull over this guy for expired tabs. Ask for his ID and he's feeling around for his wallet. Can't find it. He says, "Oh man, I'm one of you. It's cool." "Oh, what department?" "Oh, actually I'm a security guard, but same thing." I'm polite. "So, where's your ID?" "Oh, it's in the..." And he mentions to the trunk. "It's in the trunk?" "Actually, no." My BS radar is going off. "Okay, want to get your ID out of the trunk?" "Nah, I don't have it." He starts looking around for another story to use. But now I know I'm supposed to stay out of the trunk. He's also not giving me any more information. "No ID? Then I have to take you in and get you fingerprinted." I'm going to get into that trunk one way or another. He's looking like he's lost. I ask him what's in the trunk, but he's not talking anymore. We pull him out and get him in cuffs. Another officer takes him to get ID through fingerprints. Since his car is expired past 6 months, California, we tow the car. In the process of getting ready to tow the car, we need to take a quick inventory. In the trunk was a police uniform with fake patches and a metal badge. No gun, but a duty belt. He also has stacks of child porn. This is a guy who a neighboring city had been looking for months. His MO was to dress as a police officer, talk to kids, and you can figure out the rest. If he just gave me his name, I could have looked up his ID and verified he had one. I'd probably have let him go. But You know, some people are just stupid and want to get caught. Similarly, when I was growing up, a cop approached my mom, an attorney, at our house. She closed the door behind her, and I watched the interaction inside with my doggo. Now, my mom was always very honest with me about criminal stuff. She probably wanted to scare me out of committing crimes, something that largely worked. She comes back inside a good 30 minutes later and tells me about the stupidest meth dealers ever. Guy and girlfriend sell mad meth just down the block from my house. They are the big boy distributors of the area. Small but biggish city. Don't know how TF the meth scene works. And the cops have been hoping to bring these guys down. Well, the cops caught a break when the meth heads confessed to a dispatcher. Turns out they were robbed by a rival dealer and their computer was stolen. This is the early 2000s, so desktops were still pretty clunky, along with all their meth. They called 911 and proceeded to tell them all of these details, somehow never realizing their stupidity. The cops swooped in, station is literally 2 minutes away, arrested the lot of them, and then told my mom everything. They were in our neighborhood, and my mom knows and is loved by everyone. Moral of the story? When reporting your house being robbed, maybe leave out the part where all of your meth was stolen. Not me, but my boyfriend. BF's working overnight when a guy comes through town doing 35 miles an hour in a 25 miles an hour zone. BF pulls the guy over and asks for his documentation, license, registration, insurance. Guy flips open his glove box, snatches his documents out and snaps the glove box closed super fast. BF laughs and says, "What do you have in there?" Guy gets a little sheepish and says, "You know, registration, insurance, and a little bit of weed." BF, "What?" Guy coughs and says, registration, insurance, and a little bit of weed. BF laughs again and says, "Seriously? Can I see?" Guy got a slap on the wrist for being honest and having a very small amount. Okay, so we had a DUI accident where a guy kept driving straight into the woods into a tree because his GPS was predicting a future street. He walked back to his hotel room and left his check-in papers in the car. So we go to the hotel and go to his room and knock on the door. He did not have to answer, but he did. He was pretty clearly drunk. I asked him if he had anything to drink since the accident. He did not have to answer, or he could have told us that he drank after the accident. He said, "No, I haven't had anything to drink since the accident." And where I'm from, you have 24 hours to report a property damage only accident, so it wasn't even a hit and run. So as I'm locking the guy up, he tells me he's a lawyer. I told him, "I hope you're not a defense attorney." Not a cop, but pretty applicable to the thread. When I was in high school, I liked to park in parking spots that cars had parked poorly next to just as a frick you. One time I was at a high school football game and a Jeep had parked like shit. He was nearly halfway into the spot next to him and parked at an angle. I was driving a 98 Chevy Silverado, big old pickup truck at the time, and I had my brother help me guide me into the spot, so I was perfectly in the lines. That made it so the driver door was completely impossible to get in. I took a picture for the novelty of it and went on my way. When I got back to my car, the Jeep was gone and every panel on the passenger side of my car was keyed. There was an officer nearby, so I told him about it and I showed him the picture. He told me there's not a lot they could do because there was no witnesses, but he'd give it a shot. He looked up their license plate, called them and asked them if they had done it. They confessed and ended up having to pay $1,600 in restitution along with getting a felony. I guess honesty doesn't always pay off. The absolute best example of this has to be Dennis Rader, aka the BTK Killer. For those of you unfamiliar with BTK, it stood for Bind, Torture, Kill, and he was a notorious serial killer, spanning several decades from 1974 until 1991, and he's responsible for at least 10 murders. Anyway, BTK went silent for a long time and nobody had heard anything up until 2004 when he started sending letters to the police and media again. In 2005, he sends a letter to the police asking if he sends in a floppy disk, would they be able to trace it? They tell him no. So the doofus sends them a disk. They are able to recover metadata from a deleted Word document from the disk which contained his name and the church where he was president of their council. They were easily able to find him after that, and he was arrested and eventually given 10 consecutive life sentences. He probably could have gotten away with all those murders if he would have just stayed silent. Not me, but my dad. My dad was in an army helicopter unit assigned to local police to search for marijuana plants being grown in the rural parts of my state in the 1980s. One day, they found a decently sized gaggle of marijuana plants located just off the property of a farm. They landed the helicopter on the farm and talked to the farmer, asking him if he knew that someone was growing weed near his property. The farmer got scared and immediately confessed that they were his plants. He was arrested by the police. Oddly enough, if the farmer would have played dumb, the army and the police were just going to remove the weed and leave.